Search Assistant found a heavy machinery repair company that you can buy with as little as $123,000 down and net $685,000 after making your loan payments. This assumes you use a 10-year, 11.5% interest, 5% down SBA loan to buy this business for $2,450,000. Now, they do full repair service on heavy construction equipment. They do welding, really anything that those big pieces of construction equipment, backhoes, wheel loaders, you name it, need to keep going. Now, this business is interesting if you have a background as a mechanic or any industry related to it, working with that industry. I think it would be probably tough for just anyone to come in and buy this. I think there is a unique buyer that needs to come in and purchase a business like this. But there's one thing that's really interesting about this listing is the seller is willing to do pretty heavy seller note. They're willing to finance up to $1.45 million of the purchase over 10 years at 6% interest. And I'll say that's longer term than we usually see on seller note. Usually they offer 5. Usually we ask for 10, but usually their offer is 5. A typical seller note today in the market is usually at 8. They're offering 6. Both are better than the 11.5% offered by the SBA. And obviously it's a great show of confidence from the seller, that they think this business can continue to do well without them, that they're willing to give more than half, almost 60% of the sale price through a seller note. That's a really good signal. It's also good for them as the seller because they get to spread the sale out over multiple years, really reduces their income taxes. And of course, they get to earn that 6% interest on the money while they're waiting to get paid. So we like deals like this where the seller is really willing to leave some skin in the game and show that they believe this business is going to be a continued success after they leave. But back to the business itself, if you follow the structure offered by the seller, you put $1 million down. Let's say they allowed you to finance that through the SBA, and then you did another $1.45 million through the seller's note. That would increase your cash flow after loan payments to about $730,000. So that's a pretty significant increase. Now, of course, the problem with that is likely the seller is not going to give the same terms if you were to finance that $1 million. Those terms are probably for someone who's bringing $1 million of cash into the business, just because it's a different risk profile for them if you finance that $1 million, because then they're behind the SBA. If you bring $1 million cash, they're the senior creditor on that $1.4 million. If you finance $1 million through the bank and then you finance 1.45 through them, then they're subordinated to the bank, meaning the bank gets paid first. So it's unlikely they'll allow that structure, but hey, you can always ask. And then with seller financing, you always want to watch out. Brokers don't really like seller financing or partial buyouts, which maybe we'll talk about in another video. But because the broker, typically they actually do get paid on the full sale right up front, and it really depends on their contract, so it can vary. But most of the time they get paid on the full sale amount, but it doesn't look good for the seller. So if half of it was seller finance and they get the cash up front, then essentially you've doubled the percentage that the broker receives. And then of course, if they do have a contract set up where they're going to get paid over time with the seller's note, which is, if you're working with a broker, that's how you should structure it, but not all brokers do it that way. Then they're going to get paid over time, and they don't like that either. Brokers want their cash, and they're always looking out for number one. And then we'll just note, fully seller financed or extremely heavily seller financed deals are much less common than people on social media make it seem. Most of the time, a seller wants cash up front because most of the time, it's pretty easy to do. You have the SBA program, so the buyers can go through that and give the seller cash up front. Really, the only times you're going to find the annuity deals or things like that is if there's something wrong with the business or something's wrong, that it's unfinanceable and that no one's going to be able to get SBA funding for that business. And it's really their only choice. Like, they could sell it for cash only and sell it at a discounted price, or they could sell it at a pretty high, good price and finance it over a long time. But usually you only find those types of deals if there's something wrong. We always ask for 10 to 20% seller financing, and if a seller won't offer any seller financing, we walk away from the deal.